Hi, you're listening to the Fresh Start Podcast. This is episode number 18. Hey everyone, it's Marcia. Just a little bit of housekeeping before we get into our episode today. October is Breast Cancer Awareness Month, so we have a little bonus episode for you here at the end of the month. We didn't want to go through the month without talking about how important it is to look at the stats and what we can do to help those that we know around us that have breast cancer. Or if you've gone through it, I think this episode might be some real inspiration for you. One other thing before we get into our episode, I just wanted to remind everyone that if you are enjoying our podcast, please like, share, review, rate, anything you can do on the podcast platform that you're listening to would really, really help us out to help us grow and continue doing this work for you guys. So anyway, we really hope you enjoy this bonus episode of the Fresh Start Podcast. Hey everyone, welcome to the Fresh Start Podcast. I'm Marcia Ramirez.
And I'm Stacy Wynn. We're happy to have you here today.
We are, and this is a special episode. Normally Stacy and I have a little banter before we bring on our guests. But today we're all about BRA Banter. So we're just bringing our guests right on. And I do want to say, before I even introduce my guest, I want to say this. You may think, oh, I don't want to hear this episode. I don't need to hear about breast cancer. But breast cancer, whether or not you have been diagnosed or not, affects everyone in that person's life. So whether you're a man or a woman or anything, I think you're going to find some really great, helpful information today, because breast cancer, I think you guys can correct me, but I think 1 in 8 women in America are diagnosed, which is a really, really high percentage. So the chances of you being in someone's circle, whether or not you get diagnosed, but being in someone's circle that has breast cancer is very, very high. So today's episode is really, really important. And so without further ado, I want to welcome our friends, the host of the BRA Banter podcast, Jehan Corbin and Lyn Haddad. Welcome, ladies.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for having us.
Yeah, we're thrilled to be here.
We've been looking forward to it, and I got to meet you both at the BRA Group's fundraiser earlier this month, which was such a beautiful event. And I know you guys have been part of BRA since like the early days, right? Both of you?
Yes, correct.
Right. So I know that you were so proud to just see such an amazing turnout and to see such a successful event. And we'll talk about that later. But first, I just want you both to sort of introduce yourselves to our audience. That way they can sort of recognize your voices if they're just listening on a podcast platform and not watching it. So, Jehan, would you start? Jehan Corbin.
Sure, I'd love to. Yeah, I'm Jehan. My name is Egyptian in origin, but I don't have a really cool story to tell you. I wish I did. I really answered anything that starts with a J. You can call me Jane or Joanne, and I'll answer. All good. So very hard to offend me. I'm the one with the really weird name. But Jehan Corbin, I'm originally from Birmingham, Alabama. My husband and I moved to Middle Tennessee about 15 years ago because of his job. And I'm the proud wife of Scott, and I'm the mom of 3 teenagers. So if you're the praying type, I ask you to get on your knees, please, because these teenagers are something else. But no, I'm
God
very
bless you.
Very lucky to have an 18-year-old daughter, a 16-year-old son, and an almost 14-year-old son, who I'm very proud of. And then, as you mentioned, I'm also a breast cancer survivor. So that is something that doesn't define me, but it's also part of my story.
That's beautiful. And Lyn.
All right. So I'm Lyn Haddad. And it is kind of a funny thing because Jehan, and with her Egyptian name, and myself, I have a Lebanese last name, but I'm of Irish heritage. My main name was Butler. So people meet us and we do not look like they would expect at all. Kind of a crazy thing if you can actually see us on this podcast. Yeah. But I am a Midwesterner by nature. I was born in the Chicago area, but my husband and I moved here. We love it. My husband, Gregg. And we have twin 15-year-old sons, so you can also throw a prayer our way. And I also have two yellow labs who keep me very busy. I am an avid hiker, so I'm out in the woods with them almost every day. So I love that. And I love the breast cancer community. I'm an 8-year survivor.
Wow.
And that is, the community is the one of the good things that I have found since being diagnosed several years ago. And Jehan is another thing. So we'll talk more about that.
Yeah.
But thank you for having us here.
Yeah. Thanks for being here. I mentioned at the beginning of this how breast cancer doesn't just affect the person that is diagnosed. We had a guest on a couple of weeks ago. Was it Stacy DK Kang?
Yeah.
He is the author of a book called Mindset Metamorphosis, and he talks about how your mindset can really help you get through difficult times. And his wife was diagnosed with breast cancer, and that's part of his story in how they had to just rethink everything. Like they were trying to get pregnant, and then she got diagnosed with breast cancer, and they had to put all that on hold, and then he lost his job, and it was just one thing after another. Life just hit them with a bunch all at once. And he was talking about he was reading a book called The Breast Cancer Husband.
Mm.
And Stacey and I were both like, "Oh, isn't that awesome?" Like he's like, "All right, I'm going to get in here and figure out what my part of her journey needs to be." And that's what I learned a lot too about as I've learned about bra groups, which we're going to get into in a minute, about how, the community around the person diagnosed is so, so important. And how it doesn't, it affects your husband, your spouse, your family, your friends, your job, your coworkers. The ripple effects of one person getting diagnosed with breast cancer is wide.
Hmm.
Very. And I'm so glad to know that this guest had the access to a book called The Breast Cancer Husband, because I feel like when I was diagnosed 7.5 years ago, I remember thinking my husband, he had a book when I was pregnant. He had a book to read
Yeah.
about what I was experiencing during pregnancy.
Hmm.
We didn't know of anything at the time. Maybe it existed and we just didn't find it, or maybe it didn't exist yet. I'm not sure. But it does feel it's scary for the person diagnosed, obviously, but then certainly, like you mentioned, for everybody who loves them, all the community around them.
Yeah. And I think a lot of husbands don't really take in that this is something that's happening to them too.
Hmm.
Um, my older sister was diagnosed with breast cancer 3 years before me.
Wow.
And she once told me that her husband didn't sleep for a year after her diagnosis. And, it was fear about her and the future. It was, they had 3 children. It was the pressure of meeting the whole family's needs. I mean, he just had, the weight of the world on his shoulders. And I think it's something that a lot of men don't will necessarily feel like they can reach out for help. And they feel all of this pressure on themselves. And I can tell you, as I was going through the process, I had a husband who was trying to support me dearly, but I wasn't up thinking about his needs, truly. I just wasn't. I was struggling on my own.
Yeah. You're just trying to
I
survive.
think my husband could have used the book, and
Yeah,
in
usually the patient
retrospect,
can't take care of
yeah,
can't take care of their
right,
partner, right? But and then like just to I know we're speaking, but the majority of breast cancer patients are women, but men
yeah.
also are diagnosed. And
Mhm.
I unfortunately I have a few friends whose husbands or fathers have gone through breast cancer. So it's really just
Mhm.
the spouse of either gender
That's
just
true.
needs that support.
Hmm.
And
The world.
community always plays such a major role, but in times like these, when you're going through so many different physical and emotional stages and realities, it makes such a big difference to have people around you. So how does BRA help with building community?
So BRA, I will just start my little elevator pitch here. BRA stands for Breast Cancer Recovery in Action. So, and if you look us up on the web, the cancer is lowercase c. because we don't want to highlight the cancer. We want to minimize that. That's something that we all have in common, but it's not something that defines who we are. It's just part of our story. So, Breast Cancer Recovery in Action, whose acronym is BRA. So, we love to hear all the funny, supportive puns there. There's plenty of ways we can make a play on that.
Support is one of them, right?
If you're going to have a bad case of the boot cancer, we have got to laugh about it. Okay. So, BRA is first and foremost, to your point, Stacy, just really a community for people navigating breast cancer. That's what we hope to do, is bring people together and help connect folks so that it's not such an isolating experience. The way that we do that is we have 4 primary components to our programming, and just a kind of high level overview. They include exercise, group exercise twice a week with a personal trainer, which is really key, especially when you've had surgery on your upper body. You may have had radiation on your chest wall, you've had lymph nodes removed. Like, there might be some physical modifications that need to be made in order to regain that strength and flexibility after surgery. So that an expert physical trainer that can help you navigate those modifications is really key. Plus, it's done in a group setting. It's meant to be fun, not intimidating. Hey, look, come in where you are. We're going to meet you right where you are, and let's have fun and exercise together. Because whether it's breast cancer or something else, unfortunately, we all know exercise is good for us, right? So the exercise is the first piece. The second piece is nutrition. We have a registered dietitian that provides a lot of healthy habits and nutritional information, and she stays up to date on the latest and greatest, which is so key, because when you're in treatment or navigating the emotions that come with the diagnosis, you don't really necessarily have the margin to be researching the way soy mimics estrogen in your body and all these things. It's really helpful to have an expert in that regard. So exercise, nutrition, then we have emotional wellness. This is what we like to call our magic sauce. This is how Lyn and I met, and she's a dear friend now. I wouldn't trade her for the world. So emotional wellness, I will just say, for me personally, it was the piece that I really needed. The way it looks in our program is it's kind of a support group meets a book club, and we work through a curriculum together for 9 weeks in person in a group setting. It's facilitated by 2 survivors, and you really just kind of dig into the emotions and the feelings that come with a breast cancer diagnosis. And that's key, because a lot of us, I'm not going to speak for everybody, but I know my personal journey, and a lot of women are wired this way. We kind of just power through, and you do what you have to do. And I mean, in some ways it sounds silly, but it's almost like you add beat breast cancer to your to-do list, and you just keep on going. And so for me, I was very lucky to have a very supportive community. I have a wonderful husband, wonderful family who were great. But at the end of 18 months of very active treatment with chemo and multiple surgeries and all those things, I got to the end of that, and my oncologist was like, okay, like, we'll see you, you're done. And I felt so thrown off of a cliff. I felt very discombobulated, because when you're navigating that active treatment, a lot of times your schedule is not your own, and the doctors are telling you when to show up and you're going to do an infusion here, and then in 2 weeks you're going to come back and do another one, and. And so it felt very unmooring to me to just sort of be let go. And so the emotional wellness piece, even though I had such a fantastic family and support, I was getting to the place where I thought, I just don't feel normal. Something's not right. I couldn't articulate it. So this was the piece for me that really helped me get over the hump to sort of that post-cancer, more healthy life. So I'm sorry, I could talk about that for hours, because I get really passionate about it. So I'm sorry about that. That really meant a lot to me.
Great.
Okay. So we've got group exercise, we've got nutrition, emotional wellness, and the fourth thing is education. And the education piece kind of runs throughout all of those components of our programming. But as you mentioned, Lyn and I have the fortune to host a monthly recording that's called BRA Banter, where we get to talk to guests and experts about different things relevant to the breast cancer community. So that's kind of who and what BRA is. And we started during the pandemic, and have been
Everybody starts a nonprofit.
right, right. And you say, had anybody ever started a nonprofit in a pandemic? No, the answer is no, we had not. But we went for it, and here we are, and it has grown, and we've been so grateful to see. And as you mentioned, with Oktoberfest, our most recent fundraiser, it was so encouraging to see this year's event versus our very first year and where we started. So we're happy to be here and be able to be part of this program that I feel like is really making a significant impact on the breast cancer community.
Well, I think the fact that that BRA has grown so quickly, like really, literally in 5 years, what has been accomplished shows the need for it.
It does. And I mean, honestly, we started in the pandemic because we were hearing stories about patients being dropped off to go through their infusions alone. You know, people were going through surgery alone. And having gone through one of the most challenging situations of our lives, even with our supportive spouses and family members, and knowing how hard that was, it was heartbreaking to think that everything had to be put on hold. And we couldn't accept that. And so we would go for walks, a group of us who were all survivors. Everybody who was on all the the three founders of BRA groups and the initial board of directors were all breast cancer survivors. And we would talk what would make the best nonprofit to support survivors. And we just went for it because there was a need, and it was heartbreaking to us to think about people going through breast cancer, pandemic or not, and being isolated, even more isolated than some of us had felt in normal times, because it can be isolating going through a cancer journey. You know, whatever, you can have family, you can have friends, but at the end of the day, you're the one who has cancer. And everybody can love you, everybody can want the best for you, but you're still the one who has to deal with everything. And it's just hard. And it was heartbreaking time.
I have to tell you, about 3 weeks ago, my women's nonprofit, God and My Girlfriends, we did a clothing exchange up in Joelton. And we had, if you could bring clothes that you wanted out of your closets, like this fall, you know, everyone's going through your closet going, okay, I didn't wear that last year. Let's just get rid of it. And so bring your gently used stuff, and you can drop off and then take with you, or just come shop, just come get some free clothes. And we had such an amazing turnout. It was a beautiful day. But about halfway through the day, I saw this woman with a garbage bag full of some clothes, and she was trying to get it out the door, and I could tell she was struggling. And so I went over to her and I said, "Do you need some help with that?" And she said, "That would be great." She said, "I just had a double mastectomy and I'm not really supposed to lift anything." And I was like, "Oh, girl, you are not. Give that to me." And we started walking out to the car, and she had what looked like maybe her mother with her. She looked like maybe she was in her 50s, and her mom looked like maybe late 70s. And they were both struggling a little bit trying to get out to the car. And so I was walking with them to the car, and I started asking her. I said, "Where are you in your treatment? What's going on?" She said, "Well, I'll find out next week if I have to have chemo." And she said, you know, she was just talking about how hard it was. And I said, "Have you heard of bra groups?" And she said, "No, what's that?" So I got to tell her all about bra. And because I had just learned about all that you guys do, and tears just start welled up in her eyes. And she said, "I have felt so alone in this." I said, "Well, if you go to this website," I got her phone, I showed her the website. "If you contact these women, you will not feel alone anymore." And as I was getting her in the car, she looked at me with tears in her eyes and she said, "You know, I thought I was coming here today to get some clothes, but I think God brought me here for a bigger reason." So, I mean, that's like, it just warmed my heart that I was able to like give her the information about you guys, because there are women out there that feel so alone as they're going through this. Probably even, like you said, even with a support system,
Yeah.
even with family and friends that love you, because you got to have, and that's what I learned in interviewing some of the ladies for the event, walking alongside somebody when you actually know what they've been through is just a totally different type of support, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's just people love you, and they want the best for you, and they want to care for you. And I appreciate that personally every single time. But when I started talking to some fellow survivors, they just got it in a different way. And it doesn't negate or minimize the love from my family or my friends in any way. And I appreciate it more than I can say. But there
Yeah.
was just a different connection. And we find this in our emotional wellness groups every time. We can have younger women, we can have, you know, older women, we can come from different financial and educational groups, and they all connect. It's so amazing to me. It's something that's truly, I know Jahan got very passionate about it, but it's something you really have to see. I mean, it's just
Yeah.
Well, and it's and whether I mean we're talking about breast cancer. That's the shared experience that brought Lynn and I
right.
together. As it turns out, we have a lot more in common than just that. But that's what initially brought us together.
Right.
But I like to say, I mean, I don't. I'm fortunate enough to still have both of my parents. I've never lost a parent. I can try to empathize. I can say I'm so sorry. I can offer the best support I know to someone who's lost a parent. But I can't say I know how you feel. And I think it's like that with anything. It's like you can think that you know what it's like but until you actually go through it. Really, there's a lot more to it that than what you can always see. So I just think that, like Lynn said, having that piece of that shared experience, knowing how to pronounce the medications, knowing what it feels like when you wake up with these drains coming out from underneath your arms. It's hard to explain to someone even when they just love you more than life itself. It's just hard to explain how it feels. So there comes a point when that shared experience is really important.
Do you mind each kind of just sharing a little bit about your individual stories? Who wants to go first?
Yeah.
You go.
Oh, okay. I'll go first. So I had just turned 41. My birthday's in the fall, and I tend to always get my annual appointments in the fall because it helps me remember to do it, like around my birthday, like dermatologist and dentist and all those things. And I'd had one mammogram the previous year, and that was because at the time the recommendations were for mammograms to start at age 40. But I had no family history, no risk factors. I didn't feel anything. There was nothing abnormal as far as I could tell. But so I had just turned 41 and I happened to be at my OBGYN just for my annual checkup. And she did not feel anything either. But as we were leaving, she actually delivered my youngest child. I've known her a long time. She's kind of a friend. And I had gotten dressed and I was walking out of the exam room and we were just chatting. And she said, "Do you have an appointment for a mammogram?" And I said, "No, I didn't think I needed to have another one because I had one just last year. And like I said, I don't have any of these risk factors, no history." And I said, "I thought I got to wait 2 or 3 years." And she said, "No." She said, "You know what? Your insurance is so good and it will cover it." She said, "I really wish you would just go ahead and get one." I said, "Why?" She said, "Because I have seen so many young women come in here lately that I have not felt anything. They haven't felt anything. And yet the mammogram has picked up something because the imaging has gotten so good, thankfully." So that's how the whole thing got started. It was literally that innocuous. And so I went, as I was walking out, I just went, stopped at the front desk and said, "You guys don't happen to have any appointments for a mammogram, do you?" She said, "Actually, we just had a cancellation. Come back at 1 o'clock." So I left and got a sandwich and ran an errand and came back. And that is how the whole ball got rolling. When they called me back a week later, asked me to come in for a biopsy, I was like, "Oh, okay." Like, I mean, I didn't think a thing of it because, people have callbacks and things show up on mammograms all the time that aren't cancerous. My mom had some of those fibrous cysts and those kinds of things. So I just thought, "Oh, that's what this is." It truly never occurred to me that it could be cancer. So I was shocked when I was diagnosed. I had three children under 10. And like I said, I had just turned 41. And so it really rocked my world in the sense of just that, I hate to say it, but that young, silly immortality type of it'll never happen to me. I'm so healthy kind of
Mm-hmm,
way.
mm-hmm.
It really, really shocked me and knocked me back for a loop. But I will say that I rebounded pretty quickly because I do have a really great support system, and I knew immediately I would not do this fight alone. And so in my case, it was the most common kind of cancer, the estrogen based, and it is technically the easiest to treat and has good outcomes. So that was good news. I did have a bit of the histologic grade. I won't get into all the science of it, but there was kind of a little bit of an abnormality there. So I knew I was going to have to do surgery and then chemo and really just make sure that we had eradicated any possibility of that cancer being elsewhere in my system. So
Mm-hmm.
launched that battle and originally thought that a lumpectomy was going to be enough to get it. They did a lumpectomy 2 weeks later. The margins came back. They still weren't clean. So went back in for a second lumpectomy. This time it was just a little deeper, a little wider. 2 weeks later, margins still weren't clean. So that was frustrating. And at that point, my doctor recommended just to go ahead and do a mastectomy. So did 6 months of chemo, did the mastectomy and reconstruction, ended up having a few revision surgeries along the way. I think I had like 9 surgeries total in about 14 months. So, I mean, it was an intense season. It was a really intense season. Thankfully, my youngest one had just started kindergarten. He was 5. He was and still is the comedian in our family, and so he kept us laughing and on our toes. And I mean, I don't know, y'all, trying to explain breast cancer to 2 little boys and keep them with any hope of having healthy relationships in the future. It was hilarious and challenging, but we tried very hard to just present to our kids what they needed to know at the moment, not give them too far down the road, but I'll tell you one funny story about him. He rode the bus that year because he was in kindergarten, and he had a very good friend in his kindergarten class whose mom had just had a baby. So she was nursing her newborn baby. And he got off the bus one day and he hollered. I mean, that's an Alabama term, but he yelled to the entire bus stop and the bus and across the yard, "Did you get your baby feeder thingies cut off today?" That's what he said. So we had to laugh along the way, but that's kind of my diagnosis story. And then at the end of all of that active treatment, it was about 18 months. And by the time my hair was growing back from chemo and I was getting out and about more and I was feeling a little bit better and more like myself, that's when I started to notice. It's like I would run into acquaintances at the grocery store and people would say, "Oh my gosh, you look great. You look so normal. You look, whatever normal is."
Yeah.
And I started thinking, but I don't feel normal. Like I don't, that's where I really started just feeling that dichotomy of like the way that I looked and the way that I felt. And so that's how I started looking into what else is there. And one more thing I'll say before I turn it over to Lyn is just that breast cancer, as you mentioned, it is super common. I mean, 1 out of 8 women, we're all bound to be affected or to be touched, by somebody that we know who has breast cancer at some point, eventually, because it's just that common. And that's a good thing in a way. But when I was first diagnosed, I felt like I was drinking from a fire hose because it was so much information. It was so overwhelming.
Yeah.
And people, well-meaning, well-intentioned people who love me, were coming out of the woodwork and saying, "You need to talk to my cousin's neighbor's wife," who, you know what I mean? It's like all these people that they want to connect you with. And I appreciated it, but I couldn't process it at that point. I couldn't use those testimonies with people that had been through it. It's like I was just overwhelmed for the first few months. Afterwards, when I was done with treatment, I'd recovered some and I was trying to kind of re-enter my like regular life, whatever that is. That's when I started thinking, yeah, I need to talk to so and so and so and so who's been through this. And that's when I started reaching out and meeting people for coffee. And that's how I ultimately found the emotional wellness group where Lyn and I met, because I knew I needed something and I couldn't tell you what it was, but I just knew I wasn't back to normal. So,
Yeah. Well, it's a new normal, right? I mean, yeah.
which I hate that term. I hate that term, and I kind of fought it for a long time. I really did. But you do have to. I finally had to accept I am not the same person that I
Right.
was before this experience, and that is the reality. So I fought it for a while, and I wanted so desperately to go back to being that same person. But then at the same point, I've also finally, through time, realized that would be really sad if I went through a cancer experience and then wasn't changed at all. That would be that's also not how I want to be. So,
Well, life in general, right? I mean, hopefully we're growing and learning from all that life throws at us, the good, the bad. We are constantly becoming different human beings as we experience life, whatever those moments are.
mhm.
I love I think it's Richard Rohr, Stacy, that always says, the biggest path to transformation is either great love or great pain.
Mhm.
And that's when you look back, those are the two things that transform you in life the most, I think. And
That is
but
right.
and you're doing well now.
I am. I'm doing well. Thank you.
That's great. And what's your story, Lyn?
So I am just a couple years older than her. Now I was 46 when I was Okay, I'll start at the beginning. My older sister was diagnosed 3 years before me. So
Wow.
I was 46 and I was getting mammograms and ultrasounds already because my gynecologist was concerned about having a sister who had been diagnosed. I'm the youngest of five. And we had had four sisters, one brother, and we had had no family history before this. But having such a close family member who had breast cancer, he had started writing orders for mammograms and ultrasounds immediately. So I had had a clear mammogram and ultrasound 6 months before February of 2017. And we were getting ready to go away from my birthday, similarity there. I was 46 and I got out of the shower and I noticed that something looked different in my right breast. And I was like, what's going on there? And I felt it, and it did not feel like you think of a tumor. People talk about peas and walnuts and all these fears. My breast just felt hard in my pectoral muscle, just weird. So I showed my husband, and he's like, that's weird. But it wasn't like an immediate, oh, danger, danger. You're like, it's just something funny is going on.
Mhm.
So we went away for my birthday trip and came back. And I called the doctor on a Monday morning at like 9 when they opened. And they're like, okay, we'll see you at 11. I was like, okay, family history has been noted. So I got in and my doctor felt it and he's like, yeah, that's weird. I'm going to send you, for another mammogram and ultrasound, but you were clear 6 months ago. I'm not super worried about this. And so I went to Tower Radiology and I had it. And the next day I was working at a bake sale at the school. And I was there at like 9 in the morning. And when I had gone in for the mammogram and ultrasound, they were talking to me. They're like, we are slammed today. Don't be alarmed if you don't get your results for a few days because we're just so busy. So 9 o'clock the next morning, I get a call from Tower Radiology. I'm like, oh.
Mm-mm.
So I step out and they're like, yes, we need to schedule you for a procedure. And I'm like, oh, this is not good. I'm like, I'm like sweating,
Oh,
standing out
yeah.
on the stairs. I'm like, oh no. And I remembered my sister when she was diagnosed, she's a physician, and her friend who had done it had told her that day, she's like, I'm really concerned about this. And my sister was like, yeah, a good radiologist, they usually know what they're seeing. And cancer is diagnosed through a biopsy, but when they tell you got to do stuff quickly, you always have to listen to a radiologist, and when they had called me, I'd gone in at 3 o'clock and 9 o'clock the next morning, they were calling me for a biopsy. I was just like scared to death.
Mm.
I called my husband. I was like crying. I'm like, oh. And so anyhow, I actually called a friend of mine who is a radiologist, and she did my biopsy. And she
Oh.
said, Lynn, I'll tell you, I'm very worried about this. And I just started crying. But I
Oh.
wanted to know that, I needed to know. I had 6-year-old twins, and
Oh.
I was just laying on the table. She's like, I'm going to get your results as fast as I can. I'll have them tomorrow morning, but I think you need to know that this looks really concerning. And it was an 8 centimeter triple negative tumor. And, it had happened in, 6 months.
6 months.
Triple negative is a very aggressive type of breast cancer, only impacts about 10 to 15% of women. Tends to be younger women, also African American women. And it's triple negative because it doesn't have any hormone receptors. And so it has more limited treatment options, tends to have a worse prognosis.
Mm.
And so I was living in Tampa at the time, and we got in with an oncologist pretty quickly. And the first thing she said is, I think you might want to consider doing a research trial. I was like, what? I can remember she said, well, you would do, traditional chemotherapy, but we could also give you, research drugs, just to give you that extra boost. And I was like, once again, crying and crying. And I was just like, they want me to do research trial because this is really not good. And it's 8 centimeters. And it was just all bad news. I mean, just one thing after the other. So I started a research trial, but it got canceled about 6 weeks in because it wasn't having a research trial only goes forward if it's getting better results than the traditional chemo. So that got canceled about 6 weeks in, and we proceeded to traditional chemotherapy. But I was having a lot of issues with my white blood cell counts, and I ultimately needed, I think, 4 transfusions
Oh, wow.
to get through chemo. And ultimately, I ended up canceling. Like my oncologist one day, my husband and I went in, and she said, I think we just need to stop. She said, the idea is to kill the cancer, not to kill you. Your blood counts are just too low. I was having significant neuropathy at that point, no matter what I did. I didn't get to ring the bell. Yeah, did you ring a bell? No, I wanted to ring the bell.
Yeah.
Chemotherapy, it's a tradition, but I didn't. And so then we just proceeded to bilateral mastectomy, which everybody agreed was the best case scenario for me. And then I did radiation and then rested. And then I went on to another trial of a medication that they were trialing to prevent recurrence. But it was just a very traumatic experience. I mean, it's all traumatic, but it was just every step of the way, nothing really went well. And so we were in Florida, and our families were both from the Midwest. And so when my husband had the opportunity to change, we moved to Nashville to get closer to home. And that was really heavily driven by my desire that if things didn't work out, I wanted my kids closer to our families. And ultimately, then I really needed, some sort of, I was very swollen from all the steroids. I'd gained a lot of weight, and I just needed something.
Yeah.
I refused to share most of what was going on with anybody because I don't know, it was too scary to talk about, right? And I didn't want open sympathy. I didn't want people worrying that I was going to die, even though my husband and I were like really scared. And we had family members coming down, and I had friends flying out, and people who lived near us were taking the kids for weekends. And I mean, we had so much help. It was amazing. But it was just a really, really scarring experience. I can't tell you how grateful I am to everybody and the fact that we had wonderful insurance and all the things.
Yeah.
So we ended up moving to Nashville, and I did get into after I'd had a little pause, I got into an emotional wellness group where I met Jehan and a couple other people, and it really was my salvation. I mean, I'm not sure that I would have been able to rebound in the same way if I had been left to process it all on my own. You know, my husband was great. He did try to support me. He was so scared. And
Oh,
his
yeah.
mother had had breast cancer twice when he was young. So it brought up a lot of trauma for him. And so it was just a lot. I will say that. It was a lot in our household. But now I was telling Jahan when I came over, we're at her house. I think we mentioned that earlier. When I got here today, I said, I was thinking about this in the shower, but it's not something I think about all that much, So I can tell you 8 years out, like I'm on, the other side, and I'm still vigilant, and I pay attention, and try to make healthy choices, but I'm happy and I feel good about things. So
Oh,
I
that's
feel like that's what community has done for me.
Yeah, and I think we
That's like I
we were
can't
talking
wish
about
for
that before we
more.
started recording, how it's been a long time really since either of us have truly shared our initial diagnosis stories, which because I'm 7 years out, she's 8, and isn't that encouraging that now we're sort of doing other things? I mean, we both are in the breast cancer world and we work with
Right.
breast cancer people all the time, but we're not talking about our own
Yeah.
stories and our own experiences. So that was a good thing
It's so
for
good.
you and
Yeah.
I to
I love
realize
them, and I
today.
am so passionate about helping people still, but yeah, I'm not lost in it anymore. I can truly
uh,
do that.
And also just the reminder, if whoever's listening out there, wherever you might be in your journey, because one thing that Broad Groups does is we do try to meet the person where they are, wherever they are on the cancer continuum. They might be newly diagnosed. They might be in that overwhelmed phase that I was describing, where I just could not take in any information, or I could not like connect with anybody that had a shared experience.
Yeah.
They might have been just diagnosed. You might be in active treatment. You might be just out of treatment. you might be 25 plus years post-treatment, which is how two of our three founders are 25 plus year survivors.
Mm.
I mean, we're all impacted and it all matters. This work matters to us, but your perspective will change with time. And so it's so encouraging for us to remember how, like, even hearing you tell your story, it took me right back to sort of how raw that was when we first met. And neither of us were that far away from our diagnosis. And it all felt very just in the moment. It was so real, and our kids were still so little. And now I know her sons, and they're grown men. I mean, they're taller than me. It's like I think about that time and how we've come. It really does help with your perspective, and we're so grateful to be on this side of things.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm so glad you're both thriving and doing so well. You both look amazing, and that's what I was seeing too of all the women that I was meeting at the bra event. And some of the women, two of the women that I interviewed for that event, one had been diagnosed twice and one 3 times. She had had breast cancer 3 times. And but what I see is that, them being able to jump in and help others, like you guys, like, okay, getting passionate about helping walk other women through what you've been through. I mean, isn't that sort of what life is about? I mean, you go through these hard things and then you come out on the other side, and just you walking around and breathing gives other women hope. It's like, oh, look at her. She's thriving. She's been through it. I can get through this too. I mean, you are a living, breathing piece of hope for them.
Well, I hope so. That's always what I'd like to do, is encourage people in that way. And it does bring a lot of meaning and purpose to what I went through to be able to give back and work with women. And I think one of the other women that you interviewed for our fundraising event, not one that was a multi-time survivor, but she was like 30 or 31 when she was diagnosed.
Yeah.
We're seeing younger and younger women diagnosed with breast cancer, but part of that is because the screening has gotten so good. And so we can be thankful that we have such good imaging now that it's detecting it much, much earlier.
So what is the protocol now for starting screenings? Is there a certain age? I know they've changed it some through the years.
I believe it's still 40.
I think so too.
Okay.
But, we still encourage women to be self-aware, to get used to feeling their breasts on the first of the month and noting any changes and talking to their doctors about it. They're their best advocate.
Yeah, the best thing you can do is know your own girls. So there's actually an
Know
organization.
your girls.
Know your girls. And there's an organization, it's called Feel It on the First. Lyn mentioned it. They have a great social media page, but if you're active on Instagram or X or whatever, it'll even remind you on the first of every month. But just knowing your own body and knowing what it normally feels like. And then, like Lyn mentioned when she was talking about her story, it's not necessarily always the same. It's not like a pea or a walnut. It's any changes in the skin, in the color of the skin, in the density of the breast. Obviously, a lump would be something you'd want to take in, but I do believe you're correct that the recommendation is still 40 as long as you have no family history.
Okay.
But like my daughter, for example, because of my history, she'll start getting mammograms much earlier.
Yeah.
So just the main thing you can do is advocate for yourself and know your own body really well. And if you have a funky feeling or a suspicion about anything, don't hesitate to just go and let an expert check you out.
Yeah. And just real quick, let's talk about Bra Banter, the podcast you do. What do you guys, what kind of education or inspiration, or what do you guys do with Bra Banter?
We do all the things. No, we do. We try to come up with topics that would be of interest to the breast cancer community. So we have really done a full spectrum of guests. We have talked about mindfulness, journaling. We have had Dr. Ben Park, who's the director of Vanderbilt Ingram Cancer Center, as a guest. We've talked about lymphedema. We've talked about dental care, oral care. Who else am
During
I
chemo,
forgetting?
we recently talked to a geneticist about
Geneticist.
the recent. It's so much more than just BRCA1 and 2. Those are the things that you hear about kind of in the news or whatever. But there's a whole lot more testing that can be done now to look into someone's genetic makeup.
Right. We used to be live and we loved having interaction with our guests, but it was from noon until 1. And it was really limiting in terms of who we could get as guests because many of our guests were tied up during the day. So now we have gone to a pre-recorded format, and that has really opened up the guests that we're able to get, though we do miss interacting with our members and our attendees. That was really fun. But we take suggestions. So we have an email, info@broadgroups.org, and we are happy to try to chase down guests if people want to make suggestions. We've done book authors, Margaret Lesher, right? She wrote a book, Lemons.
It's got lemons on the front. What does it say? I'm forgetting the name of the title.
Anyhow, wonderful. She wrote about her experience, and her husband was also super supportive, right?
Margaret Lesh.
Yeah.
I will say Lyn was the genius behind Bra Banter. It was her baby and her idea, and I just was lucky enough to be tagged as a co-facilitator.
She is my partner in it.
So we're kind of yin and yang. If you're not getting that yet from one of us talks a lot, and the other one is quiet. I'll let you figure out what is it.
That's funny.
So she tagged me in to be a facilitator with her, and I thought this is a genius idea. And the Bra Banter name came because we wanted it to be. I mean, we have expert quality guests that are experts in their field and very, very esteemed. But we also wanted it to have a sort of informal flow and a little bit of a conversational flow, more so than a presentation and a lecture. So that's where the Bra Banter gets its name. And we are this year actually in the process of kind of changing the format. As she mentioned, it used to be live, and we do miss the interaction from people, but also this format allows us to be more accessible when people have time to listen.
Are you only on YouTube, or
right now we're only on YouTube, so they can go to bragroups.org is our website, bragroups.org, and there's a banter tab, and you can go and listen to past conversations that we've had. You can pick by topic. You can listen to the most current one. They usually release 1 or 2 a month. And we are both moms of school-age children, so we take off July and December for obvious reasons.
Yeah.
But I hope that it's a good resource for people because they can go back and listen as they want to. We had like a stylist, a triple negative survivor who was a fashion, not an editor, but like a consultant in New York. Yeah. And she herself went through
cancer fashionista. Yeah.
And she went through triple negative cancer and lost all her hair. So she came on and talked about ways to style her bald head.
Yes.
And
we had Mary Kay.
Ways to draw her eyebrows and her, so sometimes it's not always heavy.
Right.
Science-y stuff, and sometimes it is. It's hopefully just anything that's relevant to our community.
Anything we think would be interesting.
Right. Right.
Because we are, in fact, cancer survivors. So.
Yeah.
Things that we would have liked to have known and do still want to know about. We had cardiology recently. Yeah. All sorts of stuff.
One thing people don't know about, and I did not know, I was blissfully ignorant, but when you go through chemo, there are a lot of, it does an effective job of killing the cancer, but there are a lot of gifts that keep on giving. So she mentioned like the dentist, people can have oral health challenges due to chemo. You can have women, especially, can have cardiac effects due to chemo long term. Yeah. So it's good for us to know, even in these years post diagnosis that we're in, it's good for us to still be learning and talking to people and learning.
Yeah. But
thank you so much for sharing your stories. Very impactful. And I love to hear too the perspective that you have now years out. You're giving back to the community, but your own story is kind of, moving forward. And I think that is just such a beautiful and hopeful part of how you tell your story.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Well, we are so grateful for your time today. We're so grateful that you guys could come on and share all this information with our listeners, share your stories with our listeners, because it's such a encompassing situation, and the chances of you being in the circle of someone that's diagnosed are very high, very, very high. And the more we can learn about how to help those or help ourselves if we are the ones diagnosed. And you guys are a huge key to that. It's so amazing. So thank you, thank you, thank you for the work you're doing. Thank you for coming on today. And I hope you guys keep dressing as twins. I think that's working.
But also what happens in October.
Yeah.
Thank you. It was our honor and pleasure to be here. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Y'all have a great day. And
too.
listen,
Bye.
everyone, thanks for listening to the Fresh Start podcast. We'll be back next week, or is it 2 weeks, Stacey? We'll be back in a couple of weeks.
We'll be back at some point in the future.
You'll just see us pop up on your feed. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Have a great day. Bye. This episode has been brought to you by God and My Girlfriends Ministries. If you're looking for a faith-based community where everyone is accepted, all beliefs are welcome, and no judgment, check out godandmygirlfriendsministries.org, where you can find more information about our book clubs, both online and in person, upcoming retreats, and all the events in your area. You can also find out about one of our favorite things that we do, our Single Moms Christmas Blessing Ministry. So go check out godandmygirlfriendsministries.org. We would love to have you a part of our community.